Before entering the activation code, check again to make sure your unit is unloaded. Keep the front of your TASER device away from your fingers and body parts at all times. To enter the activation code, you will slide open the safety cover and click the trigger the number of times represented by the first digit in your code, then close the cover to register the number. Then, open the cover to enter the second number and click the trigger the number of times represented by the second digit. Close the cover to register the second digit and continue until you have entered your entire code. For example, if your code is 123, you will start by opening your safety cover. You would click the trigger button once, then close the safety cover to enter the number 1. You would then open the cover, click the trigger twice, and close the cover to register the number 2. Then, open the cover and click the trigger 3 times to enter the number 3. If at any time you click the trigger more than 9 times, the unit will register an error by flashing the LED red. You will then have to start over. If you enter the wrong code, the LED will flash red. If at any point you have made a mistake and need to start over, click the trigger more than 9 times until the LED flashes red. Once the LED has flashed red, close the safety cover and start over. Once you have successfully entered the activation code, the LED will flash green to indicate you have successfully activated your TASER. When the LED stops flashing, you can arm and use your TASER device. Treat it with care. The safety cover controls the power to the C2. The TASER C2 is powered down by placing the safety cover in the closed position. Placing the safety cover in the open position and exposing the trigger button powers up the C2. Powering up the C2 activates the laser and lights on models that include these options. Now let's take a look at the TASER cartridge system. The TASER cartridge contains the cartridge release buttons, blast doors, 2 electrodes, a primer charge, a non-flammable nitrogen capsule, 2 probes, 2 15-foot wires, and aphid tags. When the C2 is powered up and the trigger is depressed, the primer charge forces the nitrogen capsule onto a puncture pin that releases the compressed nitrogen, which then propels the 2 probes out at approximately 160 feet per second. The probes knock the blast doors off as they leave the cartridge. The probes are connected to the C2 by 2 15-foot wires that are used to conduct the TASER pulses to the target. The wires are steel with insulated coating. The wires can break easily if stepped on or pulled. Inadvertent contact with wires or probes during discharge can result in a shock if you break the wires. You must avoid the wires while escaping so you don't disconnect the assailant from the C2. The C2 will automatically activate a 30-second cycle when the unit is powered up and the trigger is depressed. The cycle can be stopped at any time by putting the safety cover in the closed position and powering down the C2. Now, take your TASER C2 and practice using the trigger and safety. Make sure your TASER C2 is unloaded, pointed in a safe direction, and don't point it towards anyone's face or eyes, especially if your unit has the optional laser sight. And make sure your fingers are away from the front. Now, power it up and pull the trigger. After a second or two, close the safety cover to power down the C2. The TASER C2 pulse discharge is scientifically designed to deliver a stronger initial burst to knock the target down and then decrease the power slightly to hold the subject down while you get away to safety. Every time you hear a click from the TASER C2, it discharges a shaped pulse burst of electrical charge. Each of these pulses is identical, but the delivery rate of the pulses will change over time. The TASER C2 will deliver approximately 17 pulses per second for the first 5 seconds. This is your knockdown power. The digital pulse controller inside the C2 will then reduce the pulse rate to 10 pulses per second. After 15 seconds, the unit will pause briefly, then deliver a short, high-energy burst at 17 pulses per second to reensure maximum knockdown power. It will then drop to 8 pulses per second for the remainder of the cycle. This is your keep down power that will allow you to escape. Now it's your turn to observe the full 30-second cycle on your unit. Make sure your TASER C2 is unloaded, pointed in a safe direction, and make sure your fingers are away from the front. Now, power it up and depress the trigger button. Allow the TASER C2 to run the full 30-second cycle and then close the safety cover. The top probe will come out straight and will impact the target within a few inches of the laser. The probes will only travel up to 15 feet. The bottom probe comes out at an 8-degree downward angle. It is important to keep the TASER device vertical so the bottom probe doesn't miss the target. The rule of thumb for probe spread is 1 foot of spread for every 7 feet of travel. Both probes must contact the target to be effective. However, if one probe misses, you can still make contact with the front of the TASER device to complete the circuit and repel an assailant. When a TASER cartridge is fired, it disperses 20 to 30 identification tags called aphids. These tags are printed with the serial number of the cartridge and can be used to determine who purchased the cartridge. This makes TASER personal protection devices the only easily traceable weapons in existence. If a TASER device is ever used in a criminal act, TASER International can provide law enforcement with the name of the person who purchased the cartridge. TASER International will release this information to law enforcement agencies conducting an investigation.